it was always fairly clear after seeing the first scheme that it would be monochromatic in its tone. They explained to me that they didn't want any exhibition. What you normally have in exhibitions, you walk into a room, as you know, you read an introduction text, it's normally 300 words, it tells you what you'll think about the room you're in. And they were keen on a curatorial level not to have that. And they didn't want to title the rooms either. So the rooms, all the rooms have titles like aging, obesity, cancer, but you don't see these titles here. But what they did want, or what they were kind of starting to consider, was the idea of what they called pills, which is their kind of curatorial name for these statements that made you think about things. So my idea was to kind of take all these statements and bring them to the front of the gallery, bring them into this space. It was to have these two walls where you went in, so you'd come into the exhibition, you'd read these questions, these statements, these would kind of preload you with this kind of notion of doubt that they were interested in before you enter the space. And that was kind of my original idea, was kind of slightly Calvinist, to keep everything in here. But then in the end it kind of didn't work out like that, and these statements ended up going back into the gallery. But by this point I'd sort of started to push this idea forward of these using these marks and using them as neons. And the neons are kind of purely, well, the neons I took from the architect's proposal. They had neons in their initial proposal. And that was an idea about seeing light through the glass and being drawn through spaces. And that was something I was really happy with. I was happy to take elements from the architectural proposal and just retranslate them. Part of the original architect's scheme was this idea of this reflection, that when you'd walk into one space, you'd see part of the other, but you'd see yourself reflected back. So this is also like a very well observed way of adding this idea of ambiguity to the space. You're not quite sure what you're looking at ever. That's kind of what gave the idea of using the neons like a credibility, was the way that I thought we knew that they would reflect light backwards and forwards between the spaces. But as always, like when you do exhibition design, a lot of it you design on plan. So you never really quite know how things are going to work out. Which is probably the biggest difference, or one of the most entertaining differences between doing other types of the web design or book design, is that you can always pretty much pre-test. Like with the book design, you get a dummy, you have like die line proofs, you see how everything's kind of going to be. With exhibition design, there is like a leap of faith where you design something in Illustrator, and then it gets cut by a vinyl guy, or the neon gets made, and you don't really quite know how it'll be, because the space will always do something to that work, and that's what makes exhibition design interesting for me, is that the space will always change the character of what you do.